Eyes cracked open, maybe just a little to let some light in, to stay alert. Elbows a little bit away from the body, also to help us stay alert. And you can just imagine yourself being pulled up by a string running through your spine, all the way up through the crown of your head, naturally straightening your back, elongating your neck, relaxing your shoulders and the muscles around your back. So take a moment to relax into your posture. And shifting our attention now to our breath. You can watch the breath either at the abdomen as it rises and falls, or at the very tip of your nose and the sensations that the breath forms there. And rest your attention very gently on this object, almost like a feather in the wind. Thoughts and distractions will try to pull your mind away. And just notice every time that happens. And as you notice it, no need to judge the thought, no need to assess the quality of your meditation. Just let it go and return back to the breath again and again and again. Heighten your alertness. Sharpen your attention. And on the out breath, relax your mind.
Okay. Thank you, Nivitaji. Thanks everyone for being here. We thought we'd start with some meditation today to calm everybody down. And I hope you have all calmed down a little bit, or at least we could begin to see the wild elephant of our minds in operation. So whatever, I'm going to recite a verse from a great 19th century Buddhist master as part of our motivation. So please listen very carefully. And today will be a session of listening and reflecting, and then some discussion. And I'm hoping the connection will remain viable. I'm in Bodh Gaya, the place of Buddha's awakening. And whereas the connection is usually quite good, it's quite rainy, stormy weather. So that often causes there to be a cut. So if that happens, then you'll be back, and Nivita will do something on the spur of the moment, I hope. Okay, or you can have a discussion or whatever. All right, this verse, which is very much connected with our topic of solitude and loneliness. What use is rushing around? Coming and going just tires you out. Look how far your wandering has taken you from the Dharma. Now you'd better just settle down and relax your mind. Staying put carefree, and at ease, recite the 6-syllable mantra. So this is Patrul Rinpoche's advice, although he himself was a great wanderer. He was a great wanderer, but his wandering was done based on his bodhicitta motivation. He wandered around because I guess he'd already gone through the phase of not wandering around. And he was what we do call an Arya being, kind of a very special holy being who had realized not only the nature of reality in his meditation, but he had this extraordinary mind of great compassion. So people like that are exempted from a lot of what we're going to discuss. But just as we have to learn alphabet before we can read, Kalidas or Shakespeare or whoever we read. So in the same way, we have to understand the benefits of solitude and go beyond being upset or affected in an unwholesome way by the sort of negative connotation of loneliness. We have to transform, in other words, our loneliness, as it's normally understood, into a sense of very beneficial solitude. So going on from that quote, yeah, can you hear the thunder? Yeah, it's quite interesting weather here. So I'm going to quote now from Emerson, Ralph Waldo Emerson, whom some of you I hope have heard of. He influenced people like Thoreau, who in turn influenced Mahatma Gandhi, who influenced us and is on our paper money, right? So there is a link there. He was a minister from Boston, Massachusetts, USA, an editor. He was a diarist, an essayist, a lecturer, philosopher, a poet, and very independent-minded, very intelligent, independent-minded person. He lived, by the way, in the 19th century, 1803 to 1882, for those who are interested. Now, he wrote a lot, and I'm going to quote from something he wrote, an essay he wrote called self-reliance. Self-reliance, right? We rely on all sorts of things. And of course, we're also asked to rely on the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. So what truly do we need to rely on, and how are we to do that? So I found this quite interesting, what I was looking at today. I brought 12 kilos of books to Bodh Gaya, which I want to keep here for a little while. That's the benefits, by the way, of traveling by train. It's difficult to travel with 12 kilos of books when you have a 15-kilo allowance on domestic airlines. So anyway, if you come on by the train in a higher class, then it's very easy to do. So call me crazy or whatever, and that I should have a Kindle, but I'd rather lug around 12 kilos of books, because then I feel, yeah, there's something in them, Yeah, okay. And then I don't just leave them on the shelf. He is unexpectedly, perhaps, counterintuitively, as we say, he is, in this chapter, part of it anyway, he is criticizing what was then, and probably now too, isn't it, obsession with traveling. In those days, people traveled to England, Italy, Greece, you see, from the United States, for whatever reason, for their culture, they were bored, or, because other people were doing it, because they had more money than they knew what to do with, whatever the reason. But here he's saying that, traveling is a fool's paradise. Traveling is a fool's paradise. At home, he says, I dream that at Naples, at Rome, I can be intoxicated with beauty and lose my sadness. Okay. So I pack my trunk, embrace my friends, embark on the sea. Yeah, there's no jets in those days. He embarks on the sea, and a couple of months later, or whatever, at last wake up in Naples. And there beside me is the stern fact, the sad self, unrelenting, identical, that I fled from. Yeah, you know, new environment, but still carrying around this old mind, I guess, is what he might be saying. I seek the Vatican and the palaces, and I pretend, I affect to be intoxicated with sights and suggestions, but I'm not intoxicated. My giant goes with me wherever I go. He says the rage of traveling is a symptom of a deeper unsoundness affecting the whole intellectual action. Our intellect is a vagabond. Our system of education fosters restlessness. This is all for us to think about. Yeah, this is not a lecture. I doubt he thought he was giving a lecture either. I think he wanted people to, as any good philosopher, wants people to question and to wake up, right? So this is not a pulpit sermon or one of these, you know, TV channels we get in India where the guru is surrounded by, you know, wreaths of flowers and is spouting the truth, you know. Anyway, our minds travel when our bodies are forced to stay at home. We imitate. And what is imitation but the traveling of the mind? This is very interesting. This is very interesting. So he's saying that by traveling, we're just kind of, we're not only imitating others, but we're perhaps, he means we fall in love with our own, the image of some place, and then we want to go there, and then we forget who we really are, what we are at core, what the core of ourselves is. Remember the quote from Anne Morrow Lindbergh the other day, that she said, when you know you're not in touch with yourself, you can't be in touch with others authentically. So solitude helped her to find her inner core, yeah, her inner core, the core of her being. And what that is, we each have to find out. You know, putting it in words might spoil the whole thing. Anyway, then he goes on a bit later in this chapter on self-reliance to say that insist on yourself, never imitate. Of course, this can lead to a whole bunch of discussions. I mean, does it mean we don't imitate our gurus or imitate great people? No. He says your own gift you can present every moment with the cumulative force of a whole life's cultivation. But the adopted talent of another, he's saying, in other words, he's saying something very similar to what Sri Aurobindo was saying at the beginning of the 20th century in India. And I'm going to quote that. It's one of my favorite quotes. He's kind of saying, don't adopt somebody else's dharma, somebody else's system. You know, first understand your own parampara, your own lineage, your own tradition, your own core, the core of your own being, your own culture. Don't just try and imitate somebody else. Because I think if we look closely at so many countries in the world today, we can see that a lot of it has been based on imitation of other cultures or other countries that they felt were superior. And of course, they maintain some nice little arts and crafts places and, you know, to show tourists. But how much is the deep authenticity, the core of a particular culture being preserved? And here, don't forget, we're also looking at it in inner terms, in terms of who am I really? What is my deep true nature? What am I good at? What can I offer to others? And so forth. If we haven't understood that, if we're just imitating somebody else and hoping that'll work, then we're asking for trouble. Emerson is saying 100 years almost before Aurobindo, or quite a bit before Aurobindo. What Aurobindo said was this, and he was, of course, a very great person who we should at least know about a little bit. He wrote in an essay in 1909, okay, 1909, where he's talking about the karma yogin, right? The karma yogin, the person who, as we all know in India anyway, the person who achieves liberation, realization through work, through service, yeah, rather than through more meditation or devotion, rather than bhakti marg or raj marg. This is the karam, karam marg, karam yoga, yoga of action. So the karma yogi is that person who finds union, liberation through work, through action. So he says in that essay, Aurobindo, that he's talking of the previous century, okay, in India. He says the 19th century in India was three things: self-forgetful, imitative, and artificial. Self-forgetful, imitative, and artificial. So he seems to be saying that when we forget who we really are, when we begin to imitate other people, other cultures, for whatever reason, we become artificial. We lose that authentic core, which makes us, what shall I say, a facsimile of what we should be. It makes us inauthentic, and it drains us of the kind of energy, the vitality we would have if we were properly adhering to our own swadharam, or our own, the dharma of our own being. This is not connected with belonging to any particular religion or not. It's about being authentic. It's like being answerable to one's own core, one's own inner conscience, one's own deeper wisdom nature, you could say, one's own Buddha nature, if you want to say that, which could be arrived at, one could argue, through different methods possibly. So anyway, Emerson went on to say that we imitate. And what is imitation but the traveling of the mind? Our houses are built with foreign taste. Our shelves are garnished with foreign ornaments. Our opinions, our tastes, our faculties follow the past and the distant. Yeah. So he's saying, if you can, he says, abide in the simple and noble regions of your own life, obey your own heart, you shall reproduce, something very wonderful, what he calls the full world, some kind of original sort of beauty and power that we all possess within, not outside. I've changed slightly the language because he has, 19th century English is not always easy to understand or digest. But he says our religion, our education, our art look abroad. We're looking for the answers elsewhere, outside. And so does the spirit of our society. Yeah. So this is something where if we are going to be true to our own nature and not imitate, then we're going to have to come to terms with slowing down, paying attention, right? And investigating solitude. It's like Shantideva says, we have to be, in the words of the English poet, far from the madding crowd. There's also, of course, the title of Thomas Hardy's novels. Yeah. So then you might say, okay, you're someone who's been studying Mahayana Buddhism, maybe, or you're just that way inclined. You would think, yeah, well, what about working with others in this world? How do we work with others and maintain this solitude? And Emerson himself says, it's easy to live in the world, to live after the world's opinion. In other words, if you just follow the world's opinion, then take it, you don't have a struggle, right? You just do what society wants you to do. And it is easy in solitude to live after your own, our own opinion, our own law. But the great person is he, or they say, now they're supposed to say person and they. Anyway, the great man is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with the perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. So how to maintain within the crowd what he calls the perfect sweetness and the independence of solitude. That's interesting. Eh? So how to maintain one's authenticity, one's integrity, and so forth in the crowd. Now, partly to answer that, I was for the first time looking a little bit more closely at a very classic that came out of the misery, you could say, or the kind of appalling crisis and misery of the Second World War. And that is a person called Viktor Franco, who survived the death camps, Auschwitz in his case. And in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, he writes this. Yeah, there's marvelous things in this book, but this is something where he talks a lot about the responsibility. Actually, this is not from his actual book itself. It's something he then developed afterwards called logotherapy. He's talking about, what really is a human being's responsibility. And he says, by declaring that man is responsible and must actualize the potential meaning of his life, I wish to stress that the true meaning of life is to be discovered in the world rather than within man or his own psyche, as though it were a closed system. The more one forgets himself by giving himself to a cause to serve or another person to love, the more human he is, and the more he actualizes himself. So what is called self-actualization is not an attainable aim at all, for the simple reason that the more one would strive for it, the more he would miss it. In other words, actualization only comes about when one is in that connection with others, giving oneself to a cause or to another person or a group of people. And this is coming close, I think, to what we speak about in Mahayana when we talk about cherishing others. So although there's this emphasis on solitude, right? There's this emphasis on solitude, and there's this emphasis on cherishing others. So there seems to be sometimes a big gap there. What am I supposed to do? Are you telling me to go into the woods and the forests like Shantideva and meditate there? And then in the same breath, you're saying you have to cherish others, work for others, practice the 6 perfections. So what's going on? So this we have to work out. I don't think it's rocket science in that sense. It makes sense, but initially it sounds like a contradiction, doesn't it? You're asking me to pay attention and to cultivate my inner being and to develop compassion and solitude, whatever, and then you also want me to work in the world. Perhaps there is no contradiction. Perhaps Trungpa, Rinpoche, the great 20th century master, makes it very clear. And I'll quote from him, and then we could have some discussion before we go on, because there's so many things I could quote from. I could go on and on and on till, whatever, the cows come home. So in this chapter, Rinpoche is talking about a chapter called Renunciation and Daring from his book, Shambhala, Sacred Path of the Warrior, chapter 8. He's talking about the renunciation of the warrior and the giving up of hope and fear and not being attached to the thinking process in meditation. And also, he says that the real discipline of renunciation for a spiritual warrior involves cultivating greater and greater gentleness, so that one becomes very soft and open, as he puts it, and one allows tenderness to come into one's heart. So this is also something very interesting one has to discuss. Because tenderness and gentleness, we associate that, well, we have done mistakenly, of course, up to now, largely with the feminine or with the woman, with women, and men especially have been encouraged, and more in some societies, of course, than in others, been encouraged to be very tough and unmoved and unsentimental, of course, and yeah, very tough. And because you need to be tough to get on in this bad world, in this competitive, rotten world. Yeah, so to allow gentleness and tenderness is not something that men should cultivate. You know, let the women do that, but they have to look after children and, you know, stay at home. But of course, that's changed now. So, in fact, we're seeing a bit of a reverse, that more and more women maybe are becoming more and more tough, independent, tough, and hopefully not too man-like in the sense of just being competitive and imitating men. But and some men are becoming much more soft and gentle. Anyway, here Trungpa is you know, going beyond that argument. He's talking about how everybody, you know, should be thinking about gentleness and tenderness as part of their practice. It's an essential attribute of being a spiritual warrior. Yeah. So the warrior is who has accomplished this kind of renunciation is, he says, completely naked and raw without even skin or tissue. He's renounced putting on a new suit of armor or growing a thick skin, so his bone and marrow are exposed to the world. There's no room and no desire to manipulate situations. That's scary. Sometimes the only way we feel we can be in control is to subtly manipulate a situation, to be just open, have our bone and marrow, as it were, exposed to the world is very scary. And anyway, let's come back partially to our topic, although this is all connected, obviously. Then he says, having completely renounced his own comfort and privacy, because that's what the Bodhisattva does, in a sense. They give up just wanting a comfortable private life. Why? Because it's like they say, the Bodhisattva, authentic Bodhisattva, has sold themselves to the world. They are the slave of others. They are willing to be the servant of others in that sense. An intelligent servant, obviously. So, having completely renounced his own comfort and privacy, paradoxically, the warrior finds himself more alone. Yeah, paradoxically. Why? Because he's like an island. He or she is like an island, sitting alone in the middle of a lake. Yeah, are you getting it? As Keshala would say, are you getting it? There's an island in the middle of a lake. Yeah, can you visualize? Imagine your most beautiful island. Those who've been to, I don't know, Thailand or Caribbean. I haven't been to either of those places. Anyway, you have this island sitting alone in the middle of a lake. Now, occasionally, ferry boats and commuters are going back and forth, right, between the island and the shore. But all of that activity, in one way, only expresses the further loneliness or the aloneness of the island. Yeah. The ships come, the boats come and go, but it's like having thrown a party, and then at the end of the day, everyone's left, and then you realize your own aloneness. So that activity, in some sense, emphasizes your own aloneness, loneliness. Although the warrior's life is dedicated helping others, he realizes that he'll never be able to completely share his experience with others. Yeah? The fullness of his experience is his own, and he must live with his own truth. Yet, yeah, being a warrior, he is more and more in love with the world. Right? That's the job of the warrior, is to benefit sentient beings. He's in love with the world. So that combination of love affair and loneliness is what enables the warrior to constantly reach out to help others. Yeah? So combination of love affair and loneliness is what enables the warrior to constantly reach out to help others. You know, and we can discuss that. There's some things to be said there. So by renouncing his private world, the warrior discovers a greater universe and a fuller and fuller broken heart. So this is not something to feel bad about. It is a cause for rejoicing. It is entering the warrior's world. So, there's a lot there. We've quoted Trungpa and Emerson and Franco. We've gone from the mid-19th century to last quarter of the 20th century. I haven't quoted anyone from the 21st century yet. That may come in later episodes. And maybe one of you would like to quote someone who's written in the 21st century. Yeah. Just one more thing. One thing which is quite striking, a short quotation again from one of the best bargains I think you can find in the market today, one of the best, a book of quotations from Chögyam Trungpa for 195 rupees, which is probably less than the cost of a small coffee in Starbucks, right? Similar. So, I mean, it's just unbelievable to think of comparing that with the 5-minute sense explosion of having that coffee, and then the lasting benefits of even one quotation, one page of this book, which has 125 pages almost. It's unbelievable. Anyway, this is I'm pitching for books rather than just coffee. Both are no doubt essential in our world. All right. Can I please summarize everything we just heard from Emerson and Trungpa? Come on, what do you think this is? I'm not an academic. I can't do that. But yeah, we will at the end. But let's discuss first. But everything we summarized, I thought I had just summarized it actually. But anyway, can you read the last 2 lines of Trungpa again? Good grief. Oh, and can one be a for-profit bodhisattva? Yeah, for spiritual profit, but not if the main concern is financial gain, then one is not a true bodhisattva. We need to survive, right? But if the bodhisattva is teaching and helping others only in order to survive, then that's maybe a bit tricky. That's a bit fishy, as some teachers would say. So, yeah, better to be charitable bodhisattva, but we have to be feet on the ground bodhisattva, and we have to survive. And of course, if the bodhisattva is making a profit in order to share that and do some other very noble activity that's going to benefit others, then fantastic. Nobody is saying we should all be poor, naked, rag-wearing bodhisattvas. If we have a lot of wealth, a Mercedes, a lot of wealth, and we use it with the motivation of great compassion, bodhicitta, then fantastic. No one's saying we have to be poor. The only reason poverty and chastity and obedience and all these things have been stressed in the religions is because usually we go gaga with wealth and with pleasure and these other things. That's why. But there's nothing wrong with money. Just as there's nothing wrong with pleasure. There's nothing wrong with many things. But our own disturbed mind like pollutes things, doesn't it? It's like mixing very, very delicious fresh food, pouring it into a bowl that has some old stale food in it. So then even the good food becomes inedible, poisonous. Anyway, can you read the last two lines of Trungpa again? Well, I guess that's easy to do, if you really do mean the last two lines. Well, I'll read the last three, because maybe that's what you mean. So that combination of love affair and loneliness is what enables the warrior to constantly reach out to help others. By renouncing his private world, the warrior discovers a greater universe and a fuller and fuller broken heart. This is not something to feel bad about. It is a cause for rejoicing. It is entering the warrior's world. Okay. One quote, and then we have discussion, and hopefully then you won't need to summarize everything we just heard from Emerson and Trungpa. Yeah, well, it's all actually summarized in this. Slow down, pay attention. Slow down, pay attention, be yourself, don't imitate others, find out what your own gift is, what you can offer to the world and what you can love offering to the world, like these Japanese people say, the ikigai people. Find out what you love to do, something that benefits the world, something that will help you survive, and which makes you feel good doing it, All these things should be there. It should benefit you, it should benefit the world. You should love doing it, because then you'll do it better, right? Okay, this is just a short quote and then we'll discuss. It's again from this bargain book, Pocket Chögyam Trungpa. I should get paid by these people. 195 rupees, unbelievable. Shambhala South Asia editions. These marvelous people, these kind people have brought out South Asia editions so that we're not having to pay $16, $17 for this. You can just pay 195 rupees. Okay, this on page 4, great book, you'll find a paragraph called Facing Ourselves, okay? We have a fear of facing ourselves. That's the obstacle. Experiencing the innermost core of our existence is very embarrassing to a lot of people. A lot of people turn to something that they hope will liberate them without their having to face themselves. That's impossible. We can't do that. We have to be honest with ourselves. We have to see our gut, our excrement, our most undesirable parts. We have to see them. That is the foundation of warriorship, basically speaking. Whatever is there, we have to face it. We have to look at it, study it, work with it, and practice meditation with it. So much going on. Easy to say, very clear words. Kind of frightening. He puts it very viscerally, doesn't he? You have to see your own gut, your own excrement. Goodness me. Very different from Emerson's language. Okay, folks. It's in your court, and as expected, Nitya is off the ball first. Yes, Nitya, you have to show your face to be able to ask a question. That's one of the prerequisites. Are you all able to ask? Hold on. Allow participants to unmute themselves. Okay. Right, off you go. You can unmute.
Hello.
Hi.
So less of a discussion point. It's more of a question on the last two lines that you read. I mean, I have an interpretation which I'm happy to share, but I'd also be interested in hearing other people's interpretations, which is on the last two lines of Chögyam Trungpa, when he talks about opening yourself more to the world, and
When he says what?
consequently getting more and more brokenhearted.
Yes.
And I mean, that's a interesting sort of two things to combine together. When you open yourself more to the world. So is he talking about the suffering he sees in the world? Does he sort of give a interpretation of, is there a commentary on this, on these two lines?
Think about it. We can meditate on it silently for 2 minutes, all of us. What does it mean? What would it mean for you, for us, if we did this? By renouncing his private world, the warrior discovers a greater universe. Just take that bit. Just reflect on that. What would happen if all of us renounced the private world, the little cocoon? Hello, who's in the background? What would happen if we renounced our own little cocoon that we're living in? And we know best what our own little cocoon is, what our own safety envelope is, what we don't like to go beyond. So about that, I shall have to speak for a while. Okay, so we have to check what that would mean for us, okay? Reflect on those lines. Give up your private world and embrace a larger and renouncing his private world, the warrior discovers a greater universe. What would that mean for us? For you, not us, for each individual one of us. What does it mean to give up private world and embrace a great universe? Maybe you already thought, well, maybe I should do this, maybe I should join that, maybe I should help with this or that, or sometimes go to a different restaurant or meet different people. What does it mean for each of us to embrace, excuse me, a greater universe? This is from the chapter Renunciation and Daring, by the way. That's a hint. He says in this chapter, at some point you have to leave home and embrace a larger world. That's the absolute prerequisite for being able to care for others. We're attracted to our cocoons, our selfishness. We're afraid of selflessness, stepping beyond ourselves. Yeah, and a fuller and fuller broken heart. What does all of that mean? I'm not going to give answers. I don't have the answers. We all have our own individual answers. What does it mean to be daring? Without being, just totally, you don't have to be Rambo. we have to be Wonder Woman? I don't know, I haven't seen the movie, but probably without the violence of it. So what do you think now, after a little reflection? Not long enough, of course, but what do you think? It's getting clearer or denser, foggier? Nitya, you're the one who started this.
Oh, I was on mute. Okay. I was saying that I think it's open to quite a wide interpretation, because if you sort of leave home and encounter the world, then you are still taking all that you have accumulated, like you are still taking the past with you, even if you are in the present moment, because in an encounter, otherwise, what are you sort of engaging with? That could be one interpretation. It actually brought to mind a character I read in a book. I don't know if this is because we're talking so much about books, but there's this book called Shantaram by Gregory David Roberts, and there are some nice lines in there. One of them is one of these lines came to mind of, we wake, paraphrasing him, saying something to the effect of, we wake every day, dragging our shadowed crosses into a new world with, hold on, let me just pull up that quote so I do it justice. 1 minute.
Yeah, it'd be nice if people quote from things that they have read. That would be very.
Yeah, I have it here. If you just give me a couple of minutes.
Maybe you need to blow your nose as well. Are you having a cold? Yeah.
I have some sort of dust allergy. It's not, I mean, there's,
Oh.
Yeah, I just feel kind of blocked up, but it's quite annoying. Anyway, have I found it?
Hope everybody is very alert and awake and listening very carefully. At the edge of our seats, even.
Okay, here, I got it. Okay.
Good.
He says, for this is what we do. We put one foot forward and then the other. Lift our eyes to the snarl and smile of the world once more. Think, act, feel. Add our little consequence to the tides of good and evil that flood and drain the world. Drag our shadowed crosses into the hope of another night. Push our brave hearts into the promise of a new day. With love, the passionate search for truth other than our own. With longing, the pure, ineffable yearning to be saved. For so long as fate keeps waiting, we live on.
Sorry, what was the last line? For sooner what? Just I missed the last line.
For so long as fate keeps waiting, we live on.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think in this book, he's a character that is just, in all his life experiences in the city of Bombay, he gets quite cut and broken in different ways, but then he emerges very different from how he met the city. So this is what came to mind when you asked us to reflect on, why do you get more brokenhearted as you open more to the world?
Yes. Good. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay.
we do carry a lot with us. One of the favorite quotes I had still one of my favorite quotes is that, the last line of The Great Gatsby, where it says, so we beat on boats against the current, borne back ceaselessly into the past, which is, of course, a wonderful line in literature, but what it's talking about is rather disturbing and sad, that we can't let go of the past. It's always there for most of us. But of course, from the perspective of spiritual practice, it doesn't always need to be there. It depends on the state of our consciousness in the present moment. We can elect to carry the past around with us everywhere, and every time we meet someone, be always, acting out of our hopes and fears, expectations or fears or a mixture. We can do that, but we don't have to, do we? Do we have to? If we have to, then I don't see how we can make spiritual progress, because it would mean that we are forever the slaves and victims of our conditioning, of our culture, of our experiences, and also, of course, of the billions and billions of experiences from past lives. There's so many of them that if you argue that way, we're in an incredibly complex net, which is impossible to get out of. But that's not what the teachings are saying. In fact, some teachers are saying that we can kind of instantaneously almost be free of all this, the debris of the past. But this is something we can discuss. Any more comments so far before we come into some kind of, I don't know. I don't seem to be in a state to absorb today's knowledge. I'm confused. Excellent, Vedika. Where are you? Where are you, Vedika? Are you still there? Or have you? Wonderful. Don't be upset that you're confused. That is so good. It's so good that you're confused. If you said, oh, I know everything now, I have got the answer, I've got the formula, then maybe that's a trap, If you're confused, it's good. It means that I can get my, commission from the bookstore where you'll be buying books to, unconfuse yourself. Well, anyway, I'm joking. You can study more, read more, think about it, and do more meditation. Then you won't be so confused. Or you might get more confused, and then slowly the clouds may begin to clear. For a good thunderstorm, the clouds build up like they were in Bodh Gaya today, and the black clouds coming, and then there's the thunderstorm. And then later, the sun comes out. So maybe it's a bit like that. It's okay to be confused, don't worry. And no formula or summary that I'm going to give you necessarily will make you less confused for now. But what's being said is that, and what was Lindeberg was saying the other day, is we are not in touch with who we are. And we're not in touch with who we are because we're distracted all the time by outward activity or the Emersonian traveling. Of course, I don't agree with him totally about what traveling can do for one, but I can see what he's saying. People are just trying to, the grass is greener on the other side. I'm unhappy here, I'll be happier somewhere else. Yeah, and if you're not doing your inner work, you're not going to be happy anywhere. And I see this a lot in people. They go here, there, and everywhere, and they just carry their problems with them, as I do myself. I'm not exempting myself. And one's not happy anywhere. I mean, for short periods, we can be happy in different places, but not long term. Anyway, long live confusion for a while. I mean, not very long lived, but a little bit. Okay. Ashwin, we can come back to Vedika later, unless you want to make a comment right away to what I just said. Maybe it's better you say it now.
No, I'm good.
Huh? Excuse me?
I'm good for now.
Very
You just
good.
want to listen. Just
Nothing
listen.
that a cup of tea and a good aloo paratha can't fix anyway, or whatever. Don't worry, you'll be all right. Ashwin ji. Yeah.
Yes, Kabirji. So I was just trying to put together what Emerson said about traveling, and then Trungpa spoke about leaving home. And I know that Paul Kingsnorth also in the mantra he says, "Stay in your place, love your place."
Yeah, yeah, yes,
Um,
yes.
But at the same time, Trungpa seems to be insisting that we leave home and go out to meet the world. So I'm just a bit confused because it seems a bit contradictory. So I'm wondering if by leaving home, does he mean, in some sense, leaving our comfort zones and sort of engaging with the world
I mean,
more
we have
openly?
commitments to others, don't we? We can't always stay in one place. This doesn't make sense. If your mother or father is dying at, 10,000 miles away and you have the means, then you go and visit them. You don't say, oh, I believe in this mantra, to stay in my place and love my place, If you can, and if your parent wants to see you before they die, then shouldn't you go and see your parent? And there's umpteen other examples. If you want to help, children or people somewhere away from home, they're not all going to be in your house, are they? The people you want to help, or in your neighborhood. So this is not a prohibition to go out in the world, but what are we taking out into the world with us? This is the point. What am I offering when I go somewhere and say, okay, I'm here, I want to help you? What am I actually offering to that group of people or to a person? Like if you want a close relationship with someone or you want to marry someone or whatever, what are you offering? What are we offering the other person? Just a kind of a shell that is desperately trying to be happy and thinking some outward person or experience is going to help us be happy, or some kind of belief in Buddha or somebody is going to make us happy. If that's all we are, if we're not doing our inner work, then we're doomed, right? So what are we actually offering? Which means what have we developed within ourselves, if you like? In the oven of our being, what kind of bread have we baked? Have we baked it properly? Is it half-baked? There's an expression in English, half-baked. It doesn't just refer to bread. So, what are we? And how do we, develop the authenticity to be able to offer something? So that's why we have to stay rooted in one place first, inner, outer, it can be both. Take time in solitude, as all the great texts are saying. And then we have something to offer others. Otherwise, it's nothing. It's just, we're like, I think the Bible has some beautiful quote about how we can just be like a shrill, empty, sound or drum with nothing to offer others if we don't have love. I think that was the context in the Bible. If we have not love, then we are just like an empty sounding whatever. It's an empty sound that we create. So, yeah, we have to generate something within ourselves, and that can't be done just by rushing around all the time. It's too exhausting. And that's what Emerson is saying. Traveling too much is just too much dissipation going on. Outward expenditure of energy, and we're not developing the core. Some kind of course, in the end, we have to let go of the core as well. Yeah? In that sense, that's what the great wisdom teachings are saying. But that's very high stakes practice. Yeah, when we give up any sense of even an I or a me that's, of course, if we can begin to realize that, that's wonderful. Then we don't identify with anything. No past, no future. It's just the timeless present moment. But that would require some deeper study and meditation on shunyata, on ultimate truth. So yes, where are we? 7:41, and I've had my dinner at 5:15 today. This is our institute has food available from 5:15, 5:30, which is good. Yeah,
Chris,
carry on.
I have a question. Like, how is your experience? How is your experience at Bodh Gaya?
Well, I've been here hundreds of times. Well, I don't know how many times I've been here. Probably, I've spent many years here. It's I'm working here, so it's different from being a tourist. But it can be alternately very blissful and very frustrating. But that's if you work here. Of course, being a tourist could also be very frustrating here. Yeah, if the electricity cuts or this or that. But basically, it's much more comfortable living here than it is when I first came here, whenever 37 years ago.
Wow, that's amazing. So I have a follow-up question to the lines of kind of where Ashwin was going. So and just personally, like from my own experience, right? I've been living in Boston for like the last 15, 20 years. And, I've been moving around. I've been living in different places in the States. And of course, like the more I travel, the more I learn, the more people I meet. But at the same time, I feel like I'm still in a cocoon and I'm still trying to come out of a cocoon. And the more I try to come out of it, the more insecurities, the more issues I discover, which are like super challenging and they just don't go away. And the more I work on my mental state, my health, it just keeps getting more and more, right? So does it mean that we should kind of give up all these worldly things? And that's why I kind of put up that question of like, can I be a for-profit bodhisattva? Because I generally want to make a difference in the world. But I feel like, how much time do I have left? Because I need to make a difference in my life before I can make a difference in somebody else's life.
Yeah, I don't know how much you could help others by just being a beggar on the streets without money, especially in the United States or anywhere. It wouldn't be easy, would it? You wouldn't be able to fulfill your wish to benefit others if you were basically just always wondering where the next meal is coming from or whatever. So yeah, we have to take good care of ourselves. We have to love ourselves enough to take care of ourselves, feed ourselves, and even develop a lot of resources. If we're good at that, if we're good at making money, generating resources, and we have a good heart, a good, kind heart, then it's amazing what you could do with that, And if you're skillful as well, not just using the money to show off or to, spend more money on others than the next billionaire or whatever people do, but if one were genuinely benefiting others in ways that are truly useful for the world, the planet, then that would be amazing. So if you are good at making money, I would say go ahead, but also, develop this extraordinary mind of love and compassion. And then your working to make money will benefit so many people, which would be marvelous, wouldn't it? Rather than being someone who's always asking for money. Not that that's always a bad thing, but you know what I mean. Yeah. Elaine, thanks, Akshay.
Thank you, sir.
You're in Boston, not far from where Emerson and Thoreau were. Have you been to Concord? Have you been to Concord?
No, I have not. But there's a statue of Mr. Emerson in the city. Now I live in Miami. The weather is much nicer here than Boston cold. So
you're in Miami.
Yes, I'm from Delhi originally, so like this weather is more suitable for me.
Right. Just mind the typhoons, the storms or whatever.
Yeah, they're here.
Take care. Yeah.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Elaine.
Kabirji, I was just thinking of how to, myself, how to equate what you were saying, or rather simplify it a bit, of not being comfortable in a cocoon, going out with an open heart bravely. But on a simpler note, I thought it's almost like being a good surgeon. You need to, of course, have your knowledge firsthand first. So you have that. And then you go in very unafraid of looking at the mess and the for lay people, I mean, who are not doctors, the horror of surgery, going into, really getting down and dirty, just with the aspiration of curing a person, of doing the best you can and saving a person. It's almost like what, Chögyam Trungpa says, you need to forget about yourself all the time, that cocoon of me. And you have to be brave, because when you go out, even without any, even with your self-absorption, there are hundreds of opinions, people, situations that you see which you don't want to face. It may be a beggar on the street who comes to you and you don't want to face. You kind of, hide, or you come to a person who has a problem. You may not be open at that time to even listen. You may not be open to see, like I do most of the time, of looking at an animal suffering, because it's just too much for me. And that, I think, needs bravery. That courage that he talks about, to be broken heart, to open your mind to suffering, where you're actually open and say, I know it's going to hurt. I know I'm going to get a broken heart, but I need to be able to do something about it. But to go out without wisdom, without knowledge, you are in for big trouble, because you can't handle it and you're going to come back with your tail between your legs, because you just don't have the wisdom to have that compassion. It's almost like the more wisdom you have, the more compassion you can have, because it gives you like tools, almost like the degree the surgeon has to go in and actually do your stuff without, I'm suffering, I can't handle this, all that happens. So it's quite a hard journey that he's talking about, to be a warrior in this world.
Are you talking about knowledge, as in technical knowledge, surgical knowledge, whatever knowledge, or are you talking also about wisdom?
If it was a doctor, if it was a surgeon, he would need technical knowledge. For us, we need wisdom. We really do need to know how to handle this world situation, how to handle samsara with the greatest compassion, and yet not just kind of fizzle out. We'll fizzle out. Most of the time we fizzle out when we want to go and help people,
How does that happen? What wisdom do we need? Could you put the wisdom in simple terms?
We just actually need to know the way things really are. That's the way.
How are they?
Kabirji, I wish I just know theoretically that it's not as it seems, not as we really look at it. And we need to learn that with the wisdom of, I daren't say wisdom of emptiness, because we are looking at things as absolutely objectively real, and that is going to make us suffer like anything.
Why?
Everything seems pakka to us. Even an opinion that comes on WhatsApp is pakka. Like we are going to fight tooth and nail. That is going to cause us suffering.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, maybe I've got a gap somewhere. Maybe you can help with that. There's obviously, some gap in my understanding.
I'm not trying to teach anyone anything. We're just exploring together. So would impermanence be useful? Understanding impermanence at a deeper level?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. In most things where we get stuck, we have actually, I think dependent arising really, really helps, because you know that this thing comes up, it's going to be there for some time and it's going to cease. It's not going to be there permanently. So don't get so fixated on things, and do what you can at that moment.
Yeah, and as Karuna here is saying, we just see what we want to see, which is a way of saying, I guess, that we see according to our prejudices, our conditioning, whatever. Yeah. And you mentioned courage, and that certainly, it comes down to that, doesn't it? All of this practice. If there's no willingness to face ourselves, as Trungpa said in that quote, which requires courage. If we're not willing to do that, then we just lead second-hand lives, which means what? We just go through the routine of work, and then we come home. If we're working exhausted, then we switch on the television and watch whatever, or watch cricket hours on end. And then we eat, and then we eat not because we're hungry, but just because it's time to eat. We're conditioned to eat something. And we may have a partner who says, oh, you must eat so many rotis, you know, and don't just eat one. So then that kind of life, yeah, that's so sad. That's sad. If one is living that kind of life, unexplored life, in other words. We've not faced ourselves or our potential at all. We're just given up, really. I think so many people have given.
Maybe he means by broken-hearted, maybe it's when you actually feel the suffering of another person, that you can actually feel it at the same level that the other person is suffering. You look at that suffering almost like your own. Maybe that is what he means by broken-hearted, more and more. I don't know.
The Vimla-Kirti Sutra suggests that when Manjushri visits Vimla-Kirti during his illness, the first part of the conversation is more conventional bodhicitta. And that's certainly what Vimla-Kirti is saying to Manjushri at that point, isn't it? That the Bodhisattva sees all sentient beings as like his only child, you know, and that when the child is sick, the Bodhisattva is sick. So that is definitely there. The other thing is, as Dzongsa Rinpoche often says, you can't make an omelette without breaking eggs. So something, if you don't break your heart, then if the heart doesn't break open, it remains closed, and somehow there's that sense that there's no radiating, there's no sharing with others if your heart is closed. So that makes a lot of sense. And also, yeah, if we're not awake to the pain of the world, then I wonder what kind of compassion we're going to generate if we're not really open to others' sorrow. We're just caught up in our own little agenda, our own sorrow, our own cocoon only, then there's no prospect for the kind of compassion that the Buddha is talking about, or that Christ is talking about, for that matter, or for any authentic sage. Real sage would be talking about different kind of love and compassion. And some just say it simply, you know, where the I is not, where there is no center, where there is no me left. That's when real, genuine love can flourish. But, you know, that's not easily, it's not easy to come by necessarily. Or not without a lot of drugs, rock and roll. And then it doesn't last long, and then you feel exhausted afterwards. So still some time left. I have another Zoom meeting at 8:30, work related, but that's still 35 minutes away. What else, folks? Faridunji, how are you? Our Mumbai Walas are quiet today. Maybe Faridunji is looking after his mum.
I'm good, thank you. Yeah.
Good.
How is Bodh Gaya? We've got a little rain here. We don't have the thunder, but
yeah, nice and wet. I haven't been to the temple yet. I'll go tomorrow.
Okay. I'd spent a rainy night, a rainy eclipsed full moon night at the temple years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. It was quite an experience. Yeah, it was.
Yeah. What else? Bilal, Pradeepji, anything? Tushita Delhi, look at that. Look at Tushita Delhi. Who's behind you, Naveen? Who's behind you?
Bob is.
Who?
Bob.
Anyway, good. I'm glad there's a few people there.
Bob is here.
Oh, Bob.
This is our Tushita.
Bob is our mascot. Yes, almost. Very good. Very good.
He's
Hi, Bob.
sleeping.
Did he bring samosas today? Anyway, Bob brings samosas sometimes to the end of the Tushita sessions, but no such luck in Bodh. Pradeep ji, kaise hain? What's going on?
Kabir ji, theek hai. I was just thinking, since broken heart and warriorship, Trungpa comes from the Buddhist tradition, Buddhist thought, Buddhist philosophy. So once you realize that suffering in samsara is never going to end. I mean, if you are in samsara, if you look at the world, like there would be happiness in the world we are living in. We are living in a fool's paradise because we seek more and more and more. First, we have to break our heart to realize that suffering, the way we are looking at the world with the conventional reality, suffering is never going to go. Then that broken heart becomes fuller once you realize that there is a way out. Also.
Yes.
You look at others and you realize they are just like you. They are seeking happiness, but they are suffering. And if they
Wonderful. Yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah. Yeah, so you have a fuller and fuller heart because of first seeing the suffering and then realizing people can be liberated from suffering.
Yeah.
Your heart opens.
Yeah, if they can be liberated, and if I can be liberated from my suffering, and I want the others also to be liberated from their sufferings, I reach out to them. Yeah. Like the warrior, as you say, is the person who has broken all barriers between him and others.
Right.
So the broken heart becomes fuller and fuller with more and more realization of the ultimate truth, the reality that things don't exist the way they are, but since conventional reality also is part of our life, we have to reach out to others to help them and also make them realize that there is a way out.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. Spot on. Yeah. And then we realize in the beginning, we can't reach out to some people for whatever reason. We feel, we don't like them. They've done something to me, but maybe one day the heart breaks open so much that the embrace then covers everybody. Yeah. Fuller and fuller broken heart. Yeah. Yeah.
So there is probably no way out if we live in the conventional world. There is no way out. There will be suffering, no matter how much happiness we are seeking.
In samsara, yeah. So long as we are conditioned by delusion and karma, that's the definition. These impure aggregates conditioned by delusion and karma, then that's never ending if we don't break that cycle. Yeah. So long as there's delusion and karma, there will be suffering. Yeah. That's why the wisdom realizing emptiness cuts the ignorance that creates suffering. And then the compassion makes it vast so that we then incorporate all beings and become Buddhas. Yeah. The wisdom alone doesn't make us Buddha, but the wisdom and the compassion together, or rather the bodhicitta, to be specific. Compassion isn't enough, but the bodhicitta, the wish to become a fully awakened person in order to benefit others, liberate others, then there's that's the fullest heart imaginable, apparently. Then the heart can expand no further. Yeah.
Trungpa also is a great poet, the wonderful.
It seems, yeah, he has written poetry, yes.
He has?
Yes, he has. But just the way he spoke and the way he's been edited is often very poetic, yeah. And very meaty, very earthy. And he's not afraid of using four-letter words occasionally, which of course was okay in the early 70s in the United States. One wouldn't want to use too much of that now. It might put some people off. But that's there in some of the books. Yeah. So there's one final quote, and then we can stop. Although there's a quote, then we can still discuss a little more, but it's just on 8. There's this on page 61 of this wonderful pocket book, a section called "The Warrior is Not Afraid of Space." Yeah. It said the coward lives in constant terror of space, afraid of darkness because he can't see anything, right? Afraid of darkness because he can't see anything. Afraid of silence because he can't hear anything. The setting sun world teaches you to wear a suit of armor to protect yourself. What are you protecting yourself from? Space. The challenge of warriorship is to step out of the cocoon, to step out into space by being brave and at the same time gentle. Yes, very poetic, but yeah, kernel of truth there. Some people literally afraid of space, in the sense that we clog our homes full of objects, at least I do. You know, every shelf has to be full. You know, we're afraid of spaciousness somehow. Afraid of the out-breath. We want the in-breath. You know, that the in-breath keeps us alive. You know, out-breath. As we're dying, the out-breath becomes stronger. Makes sense, right? Bilal, you're right. Buddha believed that most suffering, actually all suffering, is caused by a tendency to crave or desire things. Crave in a basic sense also, craving the sense of I, me, mine. So it's not like craving objects in the supermarket so much as holding on to, grasping onto a sense of self, a sense of I, me, mine. Craving, yeah. So often in the early teachings, it does say that. Cause of suffering, craving, desire. That's how it's put sometimes. I don't know, however, what the exact Pali is that's being translated, but they often say craving, desire. Whereas in Mahayana teachings, it more says delusion and karma, which of course involves also craving, but it speaks, it has more in that definition, I think. Disturbing emotions, including ignorance and karmic action based on anger, attachment, ignorance, desire, etc. Yeah. Pain is inevitable, suffering is always optional. That's interesting. From Thoreau. Pain is inevitable, suffering is always optional. Interesting. Yeah. Buddha spoke of two kinds of pain. He spoke of two darts, you know, that you throw. So if one dart hits you, you have some kind of pain. Then there, with ordinary people, then there's a second kind of pain arises, you know, with the fear and the reaction to that original pain. And then we really suffer more and more. Whereas someone who's practiced, there's just the initial pain, and because of the way it's observed in a very calm, peaceful way, whatever, then it apne aap wo khatam ho jata. But to the ordinary person, the pain is compounded. There's a first dart and then there's a second dart of the reaction to the pain. So then we suffer more and more. Okay, we can stop now. What is today? Today is Tuesday. So next session would be Thursday. Morning shamatha practice continues with Navita. That's at 8:30. So for those who want to start to the day, which involves some practice like that, that's very good. So start with that, 8:30 in the morning. We hopefully there'll be a good connection like this day after tomorrow. in Bodh Gaya. I hope so. Continue in this vein, we might look at some more verses from Shantideva as well. Meanwhile, I'd encourage you to, those who are interested, investigate Emerson, investigate Franco, Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, his experience in the camps. And then, of course, there's Trungpa and his classic Shambhala, Sacred Path of the Warrior. Yeah, it's very familiar to the COVID Zoomers. Yeah. Okay. So thank you very much, everyone. Let's dedicate. Thanks to everyone who made the session possible, the technicians, and all of you, and technology itself, the people who invented it. Thanks to all the mother sentient beings, through whose kindness we're alive, and thanks to all the teachers, through whose kindness we develop spiritually, inwardly. So please pray for the long life of all these great teachers, and that we have unbroken connection with authentic teachers and teachings. So that we may properly understand and become, be Buddhas, Bodhisattvas and Buddhas. And meanwhile, may our lives be very meaningful, and not just for ourselves, of course, but for others as well. In fact, meaning of life might be in largely being beneficial for others. May we experiment with that and find the courage necessary to leave the cocoons we may be in, and embrace the wider world. Also, please pray for the landlady of Tushita, Delhi, Brahma Bhandari, who's been having some heart issues, and for whom the doctor recommended oxygen cylinder. So she's not very well at the moment. In fact, Nivitaji, if you could, I don't know, tomorrow just check on her if she's able to meet you, and inquire after her health. I think she's having a hard time at the moment. So please pray for her, dedicate for her, due to her and her husband's kindness, late husband's kindness, that we had Tushita at such a bargain rental rate. Anyway, pray for them. And for health and happiness of all of you. Thank you all for your patience, and hope to see some of you on Thursday evening. Good night.
Thank you, Govind.
Thank you.